Hi, it's Kai. Number 11, Colorphobia. Colorphobia is something you all know of, even if you've never heard that word out loud before. It is the fear of clowns. Now, some of you might know someone who just doesn't like clowns, and technically, that could be defined as a type of colorphobia. But when it comes to those who truly fear clowns, they don't want to be around them, they don't want to look at them, they can't even stand thinking about them. This fear can legitimately cause their brain to go into a panic attack, which also triggers things like nausea. Imagine the thought of something being so freaky, you literally want to throw up. Okay, maybe don't imagine that. But why? What is it that sets people off about clowns of this nature? Maybe it's because of guys like John Wayne Gacy, who was an infamous serial clown killer. Yeah, did you know he used to dress up like a clown and go to kids' parties? Creepy. Or maybe it's because of how the media has hyped up the fear of clowns, like with Pennywise in It and Sweet Tooth in the video game Twisted Metal. But in fact, it all has to do with how your mind quite literally reads clowns. You see, clowns are nothing if not colorful. They paint up their faces so that they have a unique look to them, often making their eyes and lips feel bigger than they are, having bright colors, and so on and so forth. Some people really enjoy clowns. I know, that's a little weird. When people with colorphobia look at clowns, especially ones that have a kind of visual trick in terms of their makeup, it confuses their brain, especially when clowns paint a smile on their face, but their actual lips show that they're not smiling. Not to mention, clowns by nature, of the places they perform, are tricksters and are trying to do anything they can to get people to laugh. So, with how they look or how they act, people don't really know what to expect from them, and that can indeed be terrifying. It's okay to not like clowns, but if you know someone who is honestly afraid of them, you need to believe them and give them the space they need when the fear comes over them. Number 10, Nomophobia. Now, let's look at a fear that many people will claim to have seen given the state of the world we live in right now, Nomophobia. What is that? The fear of not having your cell phone on you. Yes, this is a real fear, and it works pretty much exactly how you're thinking. Because those who have nomophobia will absolutely not want to be more than a few feet, if not a few inches, from their phone at any given time. But it's not just the attachment to their phone that promotes this fear, but also the fear of not having enough battery life, or something potentially happening to the phone, like a crack or a feature not working for some reason, and so on. If you're curious as to how such a fear can realistically happen, it's because of one single word: addiction. Specifically, cell phone addiction. Culture today has all but put on blast for all to hear that your cell phone is the solution to all your problems, and thus you need to have it on you. You must have it on you to communicate with your friends. You must have it on you to figure out what's going on in the world. People rely on their phones, and as a result, being away from them will lead to nomophobia taking hold. It's so bad that there are studies that say you can find a type of nomophobia in about 77% of the world's population. And in Italy, they're trying to get nomophobia put onto a list of true mental disorders. Do you suffer from nomophobia? Number 9, Arachibuturophobia. The first fear we talked about was weird, but understandable in many ways. The second fear we talked about was dumb, and yet has a basis that can make it easy to comprehend. And then there are fears like Arachibuturophobia, which is the literal fear of peanut butter sticking to the roof of your mouth. Yes, this is real. This is a fear that many have suffered from over the years, despite how weird it sounds. How a person develops this fear can vary, but most times, it has to do with the fact that people fear choking if they get too much peanut butter in their mouths. Or, in a previous moment, the peanut butter caused some kind of reaction that left them hurt, and thus their brain made them realize that they need to fear the situation as a whole. Now, to some, you might think there's an easy way around this fear. Mainly, you just don't eat peanut butter. But for some, that's not an option because they love peanut butter. I mean, who doesn't? They just don't like it sticking to the roof of their mouths. Plus, lots of items, including various candies and stuff, have peanut butter in them, and thus they might potentially be giving up a lot of food. Number 8, arithmephobia. If you were to hear that someone has a fear of numbers, your first thought might be to say, well, they're screwed because of the very simple fact that numbers are literally everywhere in our lives, whether we want to admit it or not. However, it's not the literal and visual fear of numbers, but rather not being able to work with numbers, math, or comprehension-wise, because your brain doesn't do that very well. A little guilty over here. This fear very much stems from the inability to do math-related things in life, resulting in a very extreme form of anxiety that can cripple you. Think of it as a fear of public speaking, but instead of that, your fear hits you when you're called upon to do a math problem in front of the class. While this fear is going to sound weird to many, those who have it are kind of in a bind because numbers are everywhere in the world. And just as important, you do math both big and small almost every day, from things like mental math to balancing checkbooks to taking inventory of your food supply and so on. So for them, they're at a serious disadvantage in terms of actually just living their lives. Number 7, Nyctophobia. I'd be willing to bet that many of you out there have had nyctophobia at one point or another in your life. Quite literally, it's being afraid of the dark. The irony of this weird phobia is that many consider it a natural part of life, especially when you're a child, because as a child, you don't understand everything in the world, and thus the dark can bring out doubts and fears. But when nyctophobia truly comes in is when you have it as an adult. And that is weird to some because you'd think that adults would be rational enough to not be afraid of the dark in any way. But that's not true in all cases. Because what sets people with nyctophobia off is the fact that they can't see everything, and thus they get anxious that anything could happen to them, whether it's them being attacked, them getting hurt because of something they couldn't see outright, and so on. This fear can cripple someone. Plus, it's always dark when you sleep, and people with this fear have trouble going to sleep because doing so allows them to be swallowed by darkness. Should such a fear be happening to you, you should consult a doctor. Are you afraid of the dark? Let me know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 6, Plutophobia. Given the current state of the world, many would love to state that there are hundreds of people in the world who have anti-Plutophobia, because Plutophobia is the fear of money. Now, not unlike our numbers phobia from before, we're not specifically talking about the literal sight of money, but rather what you do with it. You see, those who have Plutophobia don't mind having a few bucks on them or getting money from a job. Rather, they fear how much money they might get. Yes, this is a fear that has a backbone of not wanting to become wealthy at all. Some even extend it to having a fear of wealthy people, which is most definitely very weird. It gets weirder though, because those with this fear have such a desire to deal with this, and thus they'll sabotage themselves at their workplace so that they can't make more money, and thus can't be wealthy, because that's totally rational? Why do people fear being wealthy? Part of it might stem from the fact that they feel if they have a lot of money, they have a lot of responsibilities that they need to deal with, and that terrifies them. I don't really get this one. Do you? Number 5, Xanthophobia. Here is another fear that absolutely can screw you in your daily life, and yet it's 100% real. Xanthophobia is the fear of yellow. Yes, yellow, as in the color that you might be wearing right now, or something you have around you that's yellow, that yellow. Why do people have this fear? It's a bit unclear, and technically, it could pertain to any color on the color spectrum. But for this one, it's yellow, and it can be a crippling thing. After all, there are natural things in the world that are yellow, like the sun. There are yellow-colored items all over the world that you might see. Signs, school buses, pieces of art, frickin' bananas, and so on. Someone with this fear is going to be trying to avoid a color they might be seeing every day if they're not in the right place or even the right time. It's a bit hard to imagine living with this fear, and yet someone clearly had it, or else this phobia wouldn't exist. Number 4, Blutophobia. This particular phobia would be a nightmare to deal with, especially for those close to the person who has it. Blutophobia is the fear of cleaning yourself, bathing yourself, washing, anything that has to do with getting the muck and grime of your day off of you. Now, some may associate this with a rather common fear of aquaphobia, or fear of water, but it goes a bit deeper than that. Because if it was just water, then they wouldn't touch anything with water and be done with it. But instead, they're afraid of bathing. This indicates that more than likely they had an experience in a bathtub or other cleaning spot that traumatized them, and they don't want to be anywhere near that kind of situation again. Of course, the problem with this is that if you don't clean yourself, you're going to not just stink, you're going to get sick. Not to mention, there are going to be a lot of people who don't want to be anywhere near you due to the fact that you reek, making this phobia one that can make you a bit of an outcast. Number 3, Globophobia. If you were to go to a children's birthday party, what would be there to help build up the ambiance? Bright colors, streamers, a bunch of great food, music, and more than likely, balloons. Yes, globophobia is the fear of balloons, and it's a fear that has been known to happen in both children and adults in various forms. But how can someone be afraid of balloons, you might be wondering? The answer is similar to the many fears shown to you so far. It's about situations creating a fear. For example, a common trigger for this fear is a balloon popping near you and the sound causing you pain, and thus your brain tells you to not get close to what will give you that fear again. Then there are clowns. You might have a fear of clowns and associate balloons with that clown, which ironically was a bit of a trait that Pennywise gave off in the It movies. So you don't want to see balloons because you'll see that clown as a result. Globophobia can be so bad that even the sight of balloons on TV is enough to set this person off. Number 2, Agoraphobia. Many out there have no doubt heard of agoraphobia, or the fear of going outside. But many also likely feel that this is played up, because no one is afraid to go outside, right? Wrong. It may be an odd fear, but it's one that happens to people quite often, mainly because something happened to them in the outside world that made them so fearful that they never dare to go out again. In their home, or wherever they live, they feel safe, and even attempting to go outside that safe place is impossible. So, yeah, this is a real thing, and it can honestly be one of the hardest fears to overcome due to the fear and anxiety that comes in trying to break it. Number 1, Hippopotamunstrosis phobia. Hippopotamunstrosis phobia is, in fact, the longest word in the English dictionary. And fun fact, it's also the name of the fear of long words. Yes, this is a real thing, and there are people who truly have it. This fear is born because sometimes people have trouble pronouncing long words, and they get embarrassed by messing up. Also, those with dyslexia are known to have this, as their condition can make long words impossible to read. Thanks for watching. What do you think of these weird phobias? Do you know anyone who has some of these fears? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe. See you next time. Bye.